and thank you for joining us on this edition of You and Your Community, reaching you from Ottawa, the Canadian capital city. I'm Joy Osiago. Welcome. We got so many text messages and emails after our last report about the Canadian immigration visa scam going on in Nigeria. Some prospective immigrants wanted to know what steps to take to ensure that they do not fall into the hands of fraudsters. Now, if you're in this category, then you'll want to watch this video to the end. We had an illuminating discussion with barrister Kingsley Jesorobo, a prolific and intercontinental Nigerian-Canadian legal practitioner in Toronto with several years of practice. He has a firm understanding of immigration issues and spoke at length about what you need to know and do. A very good evening to you, Barrister Kingsley Jesorobo. It's good to see you after a very long time. How are you doing?
I am doing well, Mrs. Osiago. It's my pleasure to be here, and it's true, it's been a while.
Yes. Well, let's get straight into the conversation. I'm sure you've heard about the Canadian immigration visa scam going on in Nigeria.
Are you talking about the recent occurrence? Because I've heard tons and tons of stories, and it's been a perennial problem. I assume you're talking about the one that allegedly entraps the High Commission and incorporates the High Commission into this scam. Is that it?
Yes.
Yes, that is the latest from the endless array of instances where people are being duped, and the machinations of these unscrupulous and dubious people are just limitless. And it's unfortunate they are dragging the High Commission into this. It is really sad. It is really sad. You see, the point is the gullibility levels, of our people, unfortunately, have really skyrocketed, and no thanks to, the desperation that have been caused by economic hardship and all kinds of blight that the people are fighting. However, it still behoves everyone to be a little more discerning, because self-defense, as they say, is the first order of nature. And why people lose their guard, is another matter. One of my poetic phrases, one of my philosophical sayings is that one must think. It is as easy as a blink. That's it. Just think. And once you inject thoughts into what you do, you are likely to save yourself a whole lot. Talking about the letter in question, I had the opportunity to review it. A lot would have given it away as fraudulent, as a scam. But guess what? People would just buy anything. And social media, given the opportunity it gives to scammers, to multiply, their scams and spread it with relative ease. You can imagine how people will be falling victims. And, the scam is just going to continue. So the only advice is for people to be more discerning. There are a lot of good practitioners out there that can help. Assuming one is too lazy to engage in some sort of research, you can call people and say, okay, I heard this. Before you fall prey, I heard this. How true is it? From people, I can't even count how many instances I've received emails, from, these very faceless group of people telling me I have been, for example, penciled down for recruitment into. They use one particularly popular hotel. I don't want to mention the name here. They tell you, okay, this hotel is looking for staff. You have been somehow miraculously selected to be employed. And then they send mass emails out. And when people see this thing, they fall for it. It has been on. It has been going on for so long that you can't. One has lost count.
Yes, I know. I live in Canada and I still get some of those emails. Now, talking about getting involved with a legal practitioner, that is also one other area I would like you to address or talk about. Because after we went to the High Commissioner of Nigeria to Canada, Ambassador Adeyinka Shekun, to verify the authenticity of the letter, so many people watched the report and we got calls and emails. And people were saying, what do we do? How do we go about this process legally if we want to come to Canada? Because some people claimed they had used or engaged the services of some lawyers in Canada and still had challenges. How do you deal with that?
Thank you. First and foremost, I'm not here to say that every lawyer is above board. That is the first thing. But however, when you rank folks and professionals, lawyers undergo very stringent scrutiny when it comes to their practice, and they are held accountable. We are held accountable. And so that in and of itself is a buffer against engaging in nefarious and unscrupulous activities, unlike many others. For example, when it comes to immigration, there's even a provision, Section 91 of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, forbids anyone other than a lawyer and or a registered consultant. And then I'll deal with the issue of consultants in a minute. Okay, and these are people that are not lawyers, but they are given limited operational capacity within the realm of immigration law practice. So other than those, no one else, okay? And in some instances, paralegals, and those ones, they are even in court now trying to expand the scope of their involvement in immigration-related practice. Other than those very limited set of people, no one is entitled, no one is allowed, whether you are in Canada, whether you are overseas. That is even worse. I hear that many people, under the garb of being legal practitioners in Nigeria, for example, set up shops, and then they start to they start to give advice, unfortunately, to people with respect to areas that they have no clue or clues about. This kind of practice is what encourages, and then you have, people who are religious leaders, who mean well for people. They hear, and then they start to organize some sort of sessions, trying to educate people. The internet is completely proliferated with all kinds of videos from people. The first thing they do, they say, well, I'm not a lawyer, and then they go on and start to dispense legal advice. And this is where the problem emanates from. So the individual who is the ultimate consumer owes, like I said before, himself or herself, a duty to be more discerning. How do you do this? Okay. Yes, as I have said, people are licensed. If someone is not licensed, ask. Okay, are you a lawyer? You can ask the question directly. Are you a lawyer? People tend to be evasive when they are questioned, along those lines. But ask. You can ask, okay, what is your professional standing? And then you can go to the Law Society website. In Canada, we have provincial regulators of law practice. And then the person says, okay, I'm a consultant. Even consultants have limitations. They cannot challenge negative decisions to the federal court, for example. Only lawyers can do that. But then again, you find instances where some people, because they do not want to give the impression that, their rank is lower than that of others, then they engage in some other things. One of the telltale signs, of figuring out whether someone is legitimately representing you. Again, when I talk about representation, I'm talking about representation for a fee. Now, of course, anyone, your brother, your sister, your friend can assist you. But if you are paying money, it doesn't matter whether it is a dime, whether it is 1 cent, whether it is 1 naira, if you are, or 1 CD, if you are paying money, the fact is people who can represent you are very limited. one of the ways you will know is to find out whether that person has signed together with you what we call a use of a representative form. And also when they even sign it, look at it, make sure they indicate there that they are in receipt of fees or that they are being paid. Many of these people engage in these nefarious businesses by camouflaging their activities under the unpaid arm or section of that use of a representative form. So if you shell out money, if you dole out money to someone, and then the person says, okay, well, I just don't want them to know that I am your representative, or they do the act in your name, you are being shortchanged. These are the ways you can deal with, you can create some sort of, barriers between you and these, scrupulous folks. But even at that, the fact remains, like I said, many of these organizations, these regulatory bodies have websites. It is as easy as just checking on your internet connected device. Put the name of the individual. It's likely to pop up. If you can't find it, then chances are that that individual is not there. Go and log into the websites of these bodies. Ask questions and you can fish out some of these individuals. But what is even more important is the fact that a lot of the information people seek. I did watch, your interview with the Nigerian High Commissioner to Canada. I did watch it. And I was not surprised when His Excellency said, well, even people that he thought would know better, still fell for this. So where do you start? Where do you start from? Okay, you see phone numbers, you see the email address. I think it was an AOL.com sort of email address.
Some of the phone numbers are not even Canadian phone numbers.
It's shockingly so. So you would have thought that these are the individuals, and then to legitimize the concoction, to give apparent legitimacy to it, they went and drew a link or put a link to a valid article from Premium Times. So when these guys come, they are going to come with sweeteners. They're going to come with things that would distract you and give you that facade of truth, that camouflage. But you can certainly, create, a barrier between you and them. Finally, I want to say on that issue, there's this idea that somehow everyone, who lives in Canada, and this is another thing that feeds, these outrageous misnomer. Once someone is in Canada, they say, well, I have a cousin there, I have a brother there. Many people who are well-meaning would direct their relatives and or friends to competent professionals, for proper advice, for proper representation, but not, as is the case, unfortunately, with many in our climate. Everyone is deemed to know everything, at every time. We cannot continue along that very self-injurious lines. If you are not vast in an area, refer your folks to people because you may be saving them a lot. This idea of saying, well, this person is in Canada and this person should know, you probably would know more. Many of the clients I represent, I tell them, they will reach out to me and say, okay, well, I want to come to Canada to study. Please tell me what are some of the best schools. I said, listen, I'm a lawyer. I came here, I chose schools by myself. And you are, if, for example, you are in the field of engineering, how do I know which of the schools, engineering schools will be the best for you? Why don't you go online and do your search yourself, rather than saddle me, who is a novice in this area, to do it? So the internet has created a great deal of opportunity for people to self-help, to utilize and solve some of the problems. But unfortunately, because we don't engage in, serious dredging, of knowledge and mining of the mind, we are unfortunately going to be exposing ourselves to some of these very difficult, very, very easy to ascertain, but very difficult to combat, because once you are falling prey, it's going to just continue and continue and continue until it's probably not remediable. Again, sorry, I'm going on and on. Part of one of the other things is when you are represented by people who are, of course, phony, you are likely to create a lot of albatross for yourself, meaning you are likely to present an application that is deficient, that contains misleading information, because mind you, these people do not know what they are doing. All they are interested in is just ripping you off. And then by the time you submit an application that is filled with concussions, it's going to be held against you. So I've had to deal with very avoidable instances where, for example, people were banned after they presented misrepresentation to the embassy from coming to Canada for 5 years in some instances because they've been deemed to have misrepresented. These are things that are avoidable. So I can go on and on and on. The repercussions, the ramifications of falling prey can be really, really huge.
Thank you very much, Barrister, for that detailed explanation. I was smiling because I get that all the time. People call, people send text messages. Oh, my daughter, my son wants to come and school in Canada. Can you suggest the best schools for them? Why are people not engaging in research work? These things are on the net. And I said to them, look, so long as your email is active, if you send an email, they will reply you, and then you do a bit of follow-up. But the thing again, as you said, most of our people are laid back. They don't want to get into deep research. So this is a good call to action for everyone. If you're interested in traveling or whatever it is, you should also go online and do a bit of research. And that leads me to the next question, because it is what I got, one of the feedbacks I got after we aired the interview with the High Commissioner. Someone, about 2 or 3 persons sent in emails saying, okay, so what if we don't want to use a legal practitioner? We don't want to engage the services of a legal practitioner. Can we go online and follow the process on our own?
Definitely, absolutely. In fact, the irony of it is many of the immigration related websites, I'm talking of government immigration websites, they tell you first and foremost that you don't have to use a representative. Of course, as with everything in life, there is a reason why people use representatives. I'm not out here to demarket, people who have spent, their lifetime doing this. But again, to answer your question directly, you can self-represent, you can represent yourself and do whatever you like. However, I think the main issue is if you must engage a professional, try and validate that professional, try and do your research and know who that person is and what that person does and what that person is entitled or not entitled to do. As for the question of self-representation, of course, there are limits to how far you can go. One key point I'd like to emphasize here is, for example, a lot of people get the impression that once they are refused, and there are many refusers, and many of which, in my humble opinion, from the visa office are not valid. In other words, the refuser themselves or refusers themselves are questionable based on arbitrary display of disrespect, as a matter of fact, to the geographical region where these applications are coming from. We see this all the time. And as recently as 2020, I can tell you that of the maybe a dozen or so applications that I have made to the federal court challenging refusers, more than 90% of them were settled, because when the government lawyers saw how unreasonable these decisions were, they just had to throw in the towel, and the decisions were reversed and sent back for redetermination to the visa offices. It will be hard for someone to, for example, go to federal court by himself or herself. So there are limits to how much you can do when it comes to self-representation. But again, to address your point, there are things you can do. If you want to represent yourself, go ahead and do it. But it requires you to do a lot of research.
Thank you very much. This is quite detailed, and I'm sure a lot of people will gain from your wealth of knowledge and experience over the years. And thank you very much for sharing. Now, before I let you go, what final word would you give to many desperate Nigerians who want to move to Canada?
Thank you. It's hard to say this. I know that many of our people have been fed with this notion that where Canada, rightly so, Canada is one of the most hospitable countries in the world to live in. But many people have been fed with the wrong notion that somehow all you have to do is just get an application form, get someone to represent you or represent yourself, and then it's all good and dandy. No. Even with the very high level of successful applications that we have. Last year, for example, only 12,000 or so people succeeded in their applications for permanent residence, okay, as a part of the Express Entry program, you know, less than 13,000 anyway. Just compare that against a population of 200 and something million people, out of which perhaps, I don't know how many millions want to come to Canada. So we just have to have a sober understanding of what the prospects are. The likelihood of losing or not succeeding is very high by way of percentage, statistics. So people have to understand, for example, when I'm dealing with clients, the first thing they ask is, okay, if I pay this, will it be guaranteed? Why I then turn that into some sort of, very logical combat, or exchange. Why would you? Are you not priming yourself up for self-deceit and for disappointment? Who is to guarantee what? Why are you even contemplating, why are you even conceptualizing this idea of guarantee? You yourself, but why do you expect me? And that's how you are going to meet someone who will feed you or feed your unreasonable perception of life, and then you go because you've been told. I am a professional. One of the terms, standard as a matter of fact, terms of my retainer agreement is no guarantee. Many of my clients say, oh, why are you telling me this even before we get started? I said, yes, I need to tell you because ultimately, I don't want you not coming back to your senses and realizing that you are just attempting. You may very well succeed. So in the final analysis, I will say that we need to grapple with reality as we embark on these endeavors.
Thank you very much. You see, I'm smiling again because the feedback I got, you hear people say things like, I paid, I don't want to call the amount, this, I paid so much. So some people feel that if they pay a particular amount, that's the guarantee.
And there's one other myth. There's one other myth, Mr. Siagu, that I want to correct. The impression out there, as you know, I just ended my tenure as the president of the Canadian Association of Nigerian Lawyers. Here in Canada, I can tell you from my personal experience, and I've trained dozens of lawyers, and in some instances, even people who are paralegals. I do know, for example, that the myth out there is that lawyers are too expensive. Whereas, if you check, many of those who charge these astronomical fees are not lawyers.
Exactly.
So people ought to think that it's as easy as a blink. They ought to understand that it is not what they hear, out there that is actually the fact. They need to get in touch with professionals, lawyers, that's the body I represent, which have the capacity, to go the long haul with you. They can start Yeah, I'm sorry. They can start with you and end with you, no matter, the extent that your case goes. However, if you must use others, compare prices. Don't go with the fake notion that somehow because somebody is a lawyer, his fees are going to be heavier or higher than that of someone who is not a lawyer.
A friend of mine called to say they paid an outrageous amount to a lawyer in Canada. And in the end, it didn't pull through. And getting across to the lawyer again became a difficult task. And I said, okay, let me do a bit of background check on your behalf. And they gave me the details. And I found out that the person is not a legal practitioner. I called my friend and I said, if you have that kind of amount, why won't you invest it in a business in Nigeria and see what you can do about it? So this is an ongoing conversation. I want to thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much, Barrister Kingsley Jesu-Ribo. If you have a propensity for listening to people who give the impression that if you pay a particular amount of money, you're good to go, please watch this video over and over again. Kindly subscribe to our YouTube channel and social media platforms for more stories. Until we come your way with another informative edition, I'm Joy Osiago, thanking you for staying with us.